Sunday night on the Joe and Joe Weather Show at its new regular time for Sunday, 7:35 p.m. Hurricane Franklin heading for a pass close to Bermuda. Tropical Storm Idalia risks to western Florida. We've got hurricane watches up for the west parts of the west coast of Florida, centered on the Florida Big Bend, and there are some thunderstorms that are moving through parts of the southeast, completely independent of those two systems. A nice day comes to a close in the northeast. We'll see what the next couple of days bring, and we'll have much more to talk about because next weekend's the Labor Day weekend. And this is the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. Mulch, topsoil, sand, salt this winter, and anything to get you through a tropical storm or a hurricane. 631-756-1125 for the best prices in town. The website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
And Tempest by WeatherFlow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board, and it's also on the descriptor to this video. Use the coupon code IWANTAWeatherStation for any purchase you make, whether it's this or anything else on the Tempest website. And if you do, you get a big
10% off.
That is correct. So here we are on a Sunday, Mr. Rayo, and few things have gone on since we were last together. Of course, we've got Hurricane Franklin, which is going to be a major hurricane soon enough as it's continuing to strengthen. It took a peek at the last recon a little while ago. The pressure's dropped a few more millibars. And we've got Tropical Storm Idalia in the Northwest Caribbean. It's kind of funny because it's been drifting all over the place since yesterday because Franklin's out there. It's not that far away, and it's actually created a very weak steering environment that it's in, but it is going to ultimately start moving to the north tomorrow. And I've had this nagging feeling from what I've looked at, the sense I get, and also the sense the Hurricane Center, in terms of how they've been wording some of the stuff in their discussions, is I wonder if they're just a little bit concerned that, the guidance strengthens this to a hurricane. And the last couple of runs of some of the global models have actually made it stronger than what they previously had before making a landfall. I just wonder if they have in their back of their minds that the setup here dynamically might not be ideal, but given the very warm Gulf of Mexico water temperatures that are up close to 90 in the Eastern Gulf, that we could wind up with something a little bit more. I hesitate to make too much out of this, but I'm just looking at everything, and it's just been nagging me that this could wind up being stronger than advertised by the time it makes landfall.
Well, first of all, Joe Z on the chat board says possible Cat 2 at landfall near Gainesville, and I find that kind of hard to believe, considering that Gainesville is nowhere near.
Yeah, it's way inland.
It's way, way inland, so how can it possibly make landfall at Gainesville when Gainesville is, 50 miles away from the Gulf Coast? So, I mean, it may pass over Gainesville, but the actual landfall is probably going to be somewhere to the west and south along the Gulf Coast. Probably, if you're looking for a place along the Gulf Coast where landfall may be made, it might be somewhere between Steinhatchee and Cedar Key in Florida, somewhere around the Big Bend Aquatic Preserve, that area. Because again, Gainesville is way inland. In fact, it's almost midway between the Gulf Coast and the Atlantic coast of northern Florida. So
that's not a particularly. I mean, most Florida's been growing, but that is not a particularly heavily populated area. That area in the Big Bend. Not that there isn't anybody there. Of course there is, but it's not like Tampa. It's not like St. Pete. The population is a bit thinner, but nonetheless, there's going to be impacts from wherever it makes landfall. They've got storm surge issues. This is one of those situations coming in from the west or from the southwest that the surge is going to be important, even down to the Tampa Bay area or even a bit further south than that, because all that the water ahead of it on the east side with with more of a southerly wind is going to tend to be pinned into the coastline, which is different from when they come in, say, straight from the east. If they're coming into the east coast of Florida, or if they're coming up, crossing Florida and going to the other side, then it's a whole different game with the wind direction and with respect to storm surge. I just still think that this, I don't know, something about it kind of made me think of Hurricane Michael, where the dynamics didn't really look all that impressive, and there was a persistent. I remember they kept talking about persistent wind shear, a moderate wind shear of 20 knots, and Michael wound up becoming. Not that I'm saying this one's going to become a Cat 5, but Michael wound up defying those strengthening negatives, much to the surprise of forecasters, as they had to keep playing catch up in terms of the fact that it just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. But I don't know. I just, like I said, I've got this sort of this nagging feeling in the back of my mind that something like that.
Well, I mean, look what's happening right now to Franklin. Originally, we knew 5 or 6 days in advance that, Franklin eventually is going to come back after passing over Hispaniola and could rev up to hurricane force. And the category then was Cat 1. Then a few days later, they said, okay, maybe not necessarily a Cat 1, could strengthen to a Cat 2. Now, the very latest information on Franklin shows that the darn thing is expected to get maybe to a Cat 4.
Yeah.
And thankfully for the folks who live on the island of Bermuda, the track is a little bit further away than what it was looking like a few days ago. But still, you put a Cat 4 out there and you're going to have not just rough seas and rip currents for Bermuda, which is just a stone's throw away, but even, as we mentioned, along the entire Atlantic coast, there's going to be rip currents and rough seas. Again, because these things, especially when they rev up to, a Cat 3 or Cat 4, they're like gigantic agitators in the ocean. And that's exactly what we're looking at with Franklin. Now, as far as Idalia is concerned, it looks like now that as it passes over the warm waters, and they are very warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, again, as you maybe have alluded to, Joe, don't be surprised if this revs up to something a little stronger than what the forecasters are thinking right now. And that's always been a problem. I mean, it's one thing they have pretty much, learned how to get the path down to a reasonable degree over several days, but intensity forecasts still are.
It's tough. It's very tough. And I've got the loop up, and there's just a couple of things that I've noticed here on this loop. I added a bunch of frames to it. If I'm going to draw a circle around it, the center is probably on the northwestern corner of this area of bursting convection that has been occurring this evening. Centered, they don't have the latitude longitude line, so I'm just going to guess. Oh, there it is. It's 20 north, and it gets 85 west, I believe. So about 20 north and 85 west. Right in here, you can see there's actually some lightning strikes that are occurring of what may be not too far from where the center is. So this thing may be starting to get organized. It looked kind of splotchy earlier in the day. Also, if you look up to the north of 25 degrees north, you can see there's clouds running southwest to northeast. And there's a little bit of blow off going over there, so that might be some of that moderate southwest shear that they're talking about, that the Hurricane Center has been talking about. Again, I'd like to see what happens between now and tomorrow in terms of it getting organized. What exactly it's going to look like. How the core develops and how strong a core you wind up getting between now and this time tomorrow. That might be the ultimate determiner as far as where this is going to go as far as strengthening is concerned.
Well, whichever way you cut it, my concern is that I have my daughter in Florida right now, and she's supposed to come back on Wednesday. Now, she's supposed to come back. She's supposed to fly out of Orlando on Wednesday. But my question is, will they allow any flights out of Orlando on Wednesday? Maybe they might just say, hey, there's a big hurricane or significant hurricane. Why don't we just, actually, it's not the government. It's the carrier. and the carrier may just decide, like, hey, we're not going to send any airlines out today. Maybe we'll go tomorrow, or maybe we'll go on Friday. I don't really know, but it'll be interesting.
As I've said many times, when people have asked me about when we get any kind of storms, particularly in the winter time, so they're asking me about airports. I don't do airports. I don't close airports.
Right.
I don't. I know what the criteria is for airlines to delay or shut, or airports to shut down. So it's sort of a, you're on your own with this. I mean, essentially. I mean, I would imagine there'd probably be some delays, being that planes are going to have to circumvent two hurricanes, one that's off the East Coast and one that's in the eastern Gulf of Mexico, that aren't not that far apart. So I'm sure there's going to be some issues, even though she's on the East Coast. She won't have it won't have it too bad as far as any weather is concerned. But then again, thunderstorms in Oklahoma can wind up impacting air travel around the country.
And the other thing is that not Wednesday, but on Tuesday, the position of Idalia and the position of Franklin relative to the Florida Peninsula may mean that there could be a little bit of subsidence between the two systems, and will allow for a day on Tuesday where really not much is going to happen in terms of weather. So Tuesday might be a good day. I know she said she was thinking about going to Epcot on Tuesday, and that might very well be a good day to go, because after that, all bets are off as to how Idalia is going to affect Florida on Wednesday.
All right.
And you're right. She's not in the so-called Big Bend area or panhandle of Florida, where the storm is going to make its most impact. But still, you wonder whether or not the airports are going to be seeing how closely a potential Category 1 or 2 hurricane is relative to Florida, and say, the heck with it. We'll just throw in the towel and cancel everything for until tomorrow or Friday. It'll be interesting to see what happens, how Florida handles this. I know that the governor has already declared a state of emergency for Florida, even though it's still a few days away.
So I've got the upper air. This is the 500 millibar at 18,000 feet, just to show you what's going on at the moment. So I'm going to just roll it back here to this evening. And, of course, everybody, you can see where Franklin is, east of the Bahamas. And it's kind of riding around this ridge that is in the Atlantic. You got this big upper high that's way out to the east, well east of Bermuda, but it's sort of nosing in over the top. Right near 35 degrees north, and building westward back toward North Carolina, but never going to make it that far west. But there's just enough ridging that Franklin is responding to that ridging by moving northwestward, at least for now. But that's left Idalia in this sort of no man's land. You've got the western edge of the western ridge in East Texas and points westward. The southern edge of the westerly winds in the upper atmosphere is running down from the Tennessee Valley, then off the coast of Virginia and the Delmarva Peninsula. So it's kind of in this whole zone here, back in the Northwest Caribbean at the moment, and in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. There's virtually no flow, so it's just sitting there, and it's waiting for something to move it along. And I'm going to and part of and Franklin is part of this equation, because Franklin is out to the east, so it can't really. If Franklin weren't there, this would likely already be moving northward or even northeastward around the periphery of that high that's out in the Atlantic. But Franklin's going to start moving northward, and at the same time, you've got a trough. It's not a strong one, but there is a trough that sinks down into the Gulf of Mexico, all the way down into Central America, and this is going to allow Idalia to kind of ride the southerly winds there in the upper atmosphere and move it northward, and then turn it northeast, and then it'll start to accelerate, because you still can see the westerlies sitting down. This is Monday night, so. The track to me looks fairly straightforward. So it's a question of, are we going to get, any kind of strengthening? What kind of strengthening are we going to get out of this? And one thing I'll bring up, I'm just going to bring up the 200 millibar map. If you notice at the 200 millibar map, what happens is as Idalia moves northward, there's a trough here that drops down at that level of the atmosphere into the western Gulf of Mexico. It's right in here. And there's actually a bit of an upper high that is sitting right over the hurricane, which is what you would see in a situation where you're getting a strengthening hurricane. If this trough were deeper and were to drop down, say, all the way down into the Bay of Campeche and down into the Mexico, that would probably create ideal conditions for rapid strengthening. It's not forecast to do that, but it is far enough south that it does allow for a very strong, a relatively strong outflow to develop over it. And this may be the reason why that suddenly the GFS takes it down to a 959. 959 millibars as it's approaching the Florida Big Bend, and then it brings it on land after that. And of course, Franklin seems to goes well to the west. The actual center of Franklin goes well to the west of Bermuda by, let's say about 4 or 5 degrees, so at least over 200 miles, and then kind of goes over the top of Bermuda and passes by to the northeast of it. So Bermuda's not going to get anything too terrible there other than some strong winds and maybe a couple of squalls that, from some of the outermost bands. So it really wouldn't amount to much. But Idalia is going to respond to that trough, and you see it here fairly obvious by the time we get to Wednesday. And at this point, the GFS is taking what it probably would be a strong tropical storm to the Georgia coast and to the Carolina, straddling the whole Carolina coast before it turns eastward. I think it's fair to say, and I'll go to a wider view here of the east, just again bring up the upper air on this, that sometimes these things when they come up like this in the eastern Gulf can shoot up the eastern seaboard, but you'll notice on Tuesday night there's a deep trough that's moving through the Great Lakes, and it bypasses it and just basically kind of swings. It's in between. Idalia's on land, the upper center there is just near Wilmington, North Carolina, or Myrtle Beach. Franklin is just on the far right, just getting ejected to the east because of that upper trough. But there's enough westerly flow in the atmosphere, or northwesterly flow, that to me it says that there really isn't any risk of this getting much further north than North Carolina or maybe Southern Virginia, and then it just winds up getting kicked out to the east. I don't think we're going to have to worry about this coming all the way up the East Coast.
I would agree with you. And in fact, I would also say that locally here, because of that upper trough moving in from the Great Lakes and over the Northeast, Thursday and Friday should be sterling days here in the tri-state New York area with lots of blue sky, lots of sunshine, and also low humidity. Whereas on Tuesday, Monday and Tuesday, we'll have dew points in the 60s. In fact, you may get into the upper 60s here on Tuesday. Wednesday, look for the dew points to take a noticeable drop, especially during the afternoon, setting us up for Thursday and Friday, where dew points, especially those 2 days, may actually drop back into the 40s, along with, again, blue skies, bright sun, temperatures in the mid to upper 70s. Couldn't ask for a much better weather pattern, especially as we're heading into the big holiday, the final big summer holiday weekend. Joe, from this vantage point right now, I think it looks like the upcoming holiday weekend may be about as nice as what we had for the first of the 3 holiday weekends, Memorial Day weekend. This could very well be great weather for Getaway Day Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and maybe even Labor Day Monday as well.
Yep, I don't disagree. By the way, just really quickly, want to say hi to everybody. Welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show. Big hellos to everybody on the chat board and those of you lurking in the background. Joe and I, like it when we get at least 100 likes on the show, so we're up to 44. So if you like the show, hit the like button. Subscribe to my YouTube channel using your Gmail account, and turn your notifications on, because the Joe and Joe Weather Show is on Sunday through Thursdays at 7:35 p.m. Fridays and Saturdays we take off, but if there is a storm that's threatening on a Friday or a Saturday, we rearrange the schedule a little bit and we do something special, and we will always let you know ahead of time. So we've got the advisory from the Hurricane Center. It's 7:54, so the new advisory should be out at any moment, but at 4 p.m. It was at 20.1 north, 85.5 west, so well off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. You see the areas in blue indicating tropical storm warnings that are up for the northeastern part of the Yucatan, also for western Cuba. The Hurricane Center has this becoming a hurricane sometime maybe late tomorrow night. By 1 a.m. Tuesday, they have it as a hurricane as it's moving away from the Florida west coast. And we've got hurricane watches that are up for the Florida west coast, and that includes Tampa Bay, as well as storm surge watches. It actually goes, the watch goes south of Tampa Bay, and then goes northwestward from there. And if I remember my geography, it looks like it probably includes Panama City as well. You see the forecast track. Now, one thing, well, actually, no, because on this map they have the hurricane designator, just offshore. So early on the earlier forecast, it wasn't there, so you had to kind of figure out what they, you had to kind of read into what they might have thought how strong it would be before it made landfall. But they do have it as a tropical storm near Savannah Wednesday afternoon at 1 p.m. By 1 p.m. Thursday, they have it right over Hatteras. So this looks like it's going to, if it takes this sort of track, half the circulation is going to be over the open waters of the Atlantic. So that's going to help it maintain tropical storm strength up all the way up from coastal Georgia to coastal North Carolina during the from Wednesday afternoon through Thursday afternoon. And then you see they take that sharp turn to the right going eastward. And again, that's because we've got basically a northwest flow across the northeast. And if we go to the hurricane tracking models, you see where it's clustered pretty much on the Florida Big Bend, well north of Tampa Bay. But that area here is going to wind up dealing with some storm surge. And the track also takes it, some of them start to bend it to the right a little bit faster. A few of the hurricane tracking models have tracks a bit further inland. I don't know. I think that northern track that takes it off to Wallops Island and then goes to just south of 40 and 70, I think that's an outlier. There are a couple of models that are doing that, but the bulk of these models pretty much match up with the idea that we're going to have a recurving storm that's going to straddle the Carolinas. So we'll probably have tropical storm watches go up tomorrow. I would think they would probably put them up for the Georgia coast, the South Carolina coast, and the North Carolina coast.
Yeah, and again, this trough that's going to be passing over the Northeast later this week is going to pretty much suppress the effects of Idalia. Maybe we'll be still seeing red flags along the ocean shore areas for some rough seas and surf. It'll be almost like a continuation of what's happening. Franklin will be leaving, but kind of handing the ball off to Idalia and saying, "Here, keep churning."
Right.
So, but I mean, again, thankfully, this looks like for us a very nice weather pattern shaping up for later in the week. A few bumps in the roads from Monday through early Wednesday. A couple of showers maybe late tomorrow. Better chance for showers here on Tuesday into early Wednesday, maybe even some rumbles of thunder. But then things dry out, clear out, and set the stage for some pretty nice weather for later in the weekend, the holiday weekend. But Joe, bringing up the precipitation map, and if you can see, the folks who are going to get hit the hardest out of this on the mainland will be in the panhandle of Florida, apparently, and also continuing north and eastward across south central Georgia and maybe on up into portions of the Carolinas as well.
Yeah, I think most of the heavy rain is going to wind up gradually shifting to the west side as it gets further north. Also, it's going to be moving. So, yeah, the rainfall amounts are going to be substantial. The yellow area, the dark green is 2 to 4. The yellow is 4 to 6, and the orange is 6 to 10. The light green is 1 to 2. So the thing is, the fact that it's moving it means that there's a start and an end to this in a reasonable amount of time. So
Right.
we're not looking at will there be localized flash flooding? Yes. Will there be catastrophic flash flooding? It's hard to imagine that would be the case because it's moving so quick. It's going to be moving at this point when it gets on land. It'll probably moving at 20 or 25 miles an hour. So that would prevent it from getting, I would think, 10 to 15 inch rain amounts. Sometimes you get those storms that produce ridiculous rain amounts. That should not be an issue with this. And I'll just go a little wider so you can see what WPC is doing further up the coast of Carolinas and Southern Virginia. They do have the 1.5 inches north of Richmond to the southernmost part of the Delmarva Peninsula, and then you get into the reds and the darker reds and then you go to the orange. The orange areas here are basically 5 to 10 inches, and there's a stripe there that runs through in the interior part of southern Georgia into South Carolina. Then there's another area for eastern North Carolina where we're looking at substantial rainfall amounts. But if you just follow the track, I mean, if all you had was this map and somebody said to you, well, what's the track of this storm going to be? You could figure it out. I know the color is almost the same, so it'll be a little hard to see. And changing color for me on this thing is a little bit hard. I have to do it before the show. But the bottom line is, this pretty well represents the track of Idalia as it moves right along.
And our friend up in Alaska, Alfred K. Phillips, here we are talking about tropical weather and lovely weather for the upcoming last holiday weekend of summertime. And meanwhile, where Alfred is, he's up in northern Alaska, 34 degrees, 2 above freezing, and raining. That sounds rather depressing.
Oh, God, yes. Hurricane Franklin, meanwhile, forecast to become a major hurricane, and at 5 p.m., they're not doing intermediate advisories because they don't have any watches up for Bermuda. So at 5 p.m., it is at 5 p.m. Sunday, in case you're watching this during the morning hours on Monday, 25.9 north, 70.0 west. Top winds are 100 miles an hour, moving north-northwest at 8. It's forecast to become a major hurricane tomorrow, probably in the morning sometime. And they keep it as a major hurricane right through Tuesday afternoon as it comes even with Bermuda. But you can see how far west it's forecast to track from Bermuda. And then as it makes the turn to the east, it travels a fair distance to the north. So Bermuda's going to get some stuff out of this, but it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be anything too problematic.
Yeah, it just, the waves and the surf, and of course we're talking about Bermuda, it's an island or islands. So the surf is not going to be too good to be out and about in, but the lion's share of the heavy weather, the clouds, the rain, the winds, that's going to be taking place, thankfully, away from Bermuda. And last thing you want is a Cat 4 bearing down on you. But this storm looks like it will. It looks like they're going to dodge a pretty big bullet in Bermuda with this storm.
And Franklin, by the way, I've got the satellite loop up of Franklin. You can see on the last few frames a well-defined eye has developed, and it's getting that symmetrical look. So I'm wondering whether we might be seeing this now going into some sort of rapid strengthening phase, that Franklin may become a major hurricane, maybe a little bit faster than what the Hurricane Center is indicating. It's also not moving very quickly, by the way.
Right. It is not. It is not one of those rapid forward movers, like let's say a Wilma, for example.
Right.
It's plodding along, taking its own sweet time, but it's been doing that ever since it got its feet wet off of the north coast of Hispaniola a few days ago.
All right. So let's see. Why don't we just take a look at really quick? Let's see if there's any. Been trying to check out see if there's any. They've got recons out there. This is for. Let's go really quickly here. There's a recon there at Franklin, which they've got a pressure down, almost down to it's dropped quite a bit. I don't remember what they carried on the advisory, but it looks like it's about 961 or 962, and this was after the advisory came out. You see where that the red line is the pressure, the blue is the wind. The wind that's measured is up at around 90 knots, and the red line indicating the pressure is down just above 960. And if we take a look to see if they've got anything for Idalia, the information that's been coming in for Idalia has been kind of sparse for whatever reason. And now I can't even seem to be able to pull it up. So we'll check it again in just a little bit. All right, so it's 8:05. It should be a new advisory on Idalia. So let's see what that is. The forecast is
I have to give the Hurricane Center, or at least the folks over at Colorado State, a bit of credit. In spite of the El Nino, which presumably or supposedly suppresses this type of storm activity, Idalia is named storm number 9. Well, maybe actually number 8, because the first one was back in January. But already 9 storms. And
well, no, it's 9. Well, hold on. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. It's 9 named storms, and then the January storm. So that's the 10th one. That's 10.
Really?
You had the January subtropical storm that was unnamed.
All right,
and now we have 9 named storms. We're not even August still has 4 days to go. So we're on pace we're going to hit. I mean, unless we have an incredibly subdued September and October, we're going to hit the low end of their forecast.
Right, and don't forget that the traditional peak of the hurricane season is September the 10th. So
right.
We're still a ways from that.
20.1 north, 85.4 west, so it really hasn't moved very much since the last advisory. However, they have now upped the winds to 45 miles an hour, moving east. They're carrying a motion of east-northeast at 3. So, it's basically plotting. You could walk faster than this system, what this one is doing. And they don't, the actual Hurricane Center longer range forecasts are changed every 6 hours and not during the intermediate advisories unless there's some incredibly major development. So the forecast is exactly the same, but it's they've upped the winds by 5 miles an hour. So that could be, that certainly we saw evidence of that when we looked at the loop a little while ago and saw that burst of convection that was going on near the center. So let's come back home, and I will bring up the continental. Let's do the U.S. satellite loop, which is one of our regular loops that we see here, because we'll be able to see both Franklin and Idalia. And you see Franklin out there again. If you look closely, when it gets dark, you start to see that eye pop up fairly quickly. Nice looking system there from a satellite signature perspective. And then you see the burst that's going on with Idalia. Meanwhile, we've had it finally, Joe, it hasn't rained here in northeast Georgia where I am probably for about 2 weeks. And we had a nice heavy thunderstorm. Just a thunderstorm with some lightning, some thunder, and heavy rain. Not much in the way of wind. But I don't know what my total rainfall was, but I did see running water and lots of big puddles when I was driving back from Blue Ridge this afternoon. But you see the thunderstorms there with the lightning strikes going on, scattered around through North Georgia and North Carolina. They're kind of past their peak now, beginning to wind down just a little bit. So a little disturbance that's running through the atmosphere. The Northeast looking nice. Other than a few little strips of cloud cover here and there, it's been a fairly quiet day today, and the nice weather extends back over to the Great Lakes. We've got some thunderstorms with some lightning strikes going on in the Rockies from New Mexico all the way up into Wyoming, and also some storms in parts of east and central Texas and into western Louisiana, and that area has not seen much in the way of thunderstorm activity because of that big heat ridge that's been there for a good part of the summer.
In fact, now that you speak about that, let me, since I do have sharing capabilities, let me show you a few things from the Climate Prediction Center. And we'll go to the share screen. Where's the Climate Prediction Center? Don't say it's in...
I wasn't going to say anything. I was going to be very nice and not say anything.
I'm just looking here. So where are you? Boom, there we are. So I'm going to have that screen shared, and let's show you first the temperatures valid from.
Okay, you're going to need to unshare and share again because you flip. Well, don't do. Okay, there you go. Now you're back. So go ahead and share again. Share and like.
Yes. All right. How's that?
Yep, there you are. You didn't disappear. Oh, now you did. Okay, let's see if I can resolve this technical issue here. Just give me a moment here, folks. Let's see what we got. So let's try that.
Do you want me to unshare again?
No, don't do that yet. Okay, I fixed it. Go ahead.
All right. So this forecast by the Climate Prediction Center, which was issued this afternoon, which is valid for the time frame from September 2nd through September the 6th. And I just want to go here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So right here in the nation's midsection, there's an 80 to 90% probability of above normal temperatures, which means that it will probably stay very hot if you live in this zone right on through the first week of September. And meantime, while we're going to be experiencing a bit of a cool down, well, not much of a cool down, something like upper and middle 70s later this week here in the tri-state area, at least in the Hudson Valley. This suggests that we get into later on in the holiday weekend and on into next week, we're going to be seeing temperatures that are going to be averaging above normal. Now, above normal would mean low 80s or maybe even low to mid 80s. So it looks like much of the country is going to be experiencing above normal conditions, except maybe for California, most of California, and parts of Nevada and extreme southern sections of Oregon, which are in the below normal category. That's the 6 to 10 day outlook. Let's check out the 8 to 14 day outlook. And as you can see, if anything, that area of 80 to 90% above normal conditions expands somewhat over the central part of the nation. And here along the eastern seaboard, Joe, according to the Climate Prediction Center, from the 4th through the 10th, look for above normal temperatures. So if you're looking for temperatures at or above 80, it's looking like, according to the CPC, that's going to be pretty much the story here in our neck of the woods, and even hotter probably all the way down the coast to the Florida Peninsula and out west. That's where you have to go for the below normal. And it makes some sense in a way because, well, for the past week or so, we've had near or below normal temperatures here in the Northeast, while out here it's been very hot. Now, suddenly, as we move into September, everything reverses. The heat builds in the east and central states especially, and it cools a bit over in the west. And if you want to take a look at the probabilistic hazards map, and this actually was done back on Friday. They don't do this map over the weekend, but the last hazardous temperature map that they did on Friday shows excessive heat, a high probability of excessive heat over Oklahoma, northern and eastern Texas, northern Louisiana, and western sections of Arkansas from September 2nd. That would be for next Saturday, and September 3rd, which would be next Sunday. So that's where the heat is going to be, apparently, the real heat, excessive heat, and the chances diminish as you move out away from that epicenter. And still chance, excessive heat, a slight chance, going all the way up into portions of the northern plains and just to the south of Chicago and as far east as, let's say, Kentucky and into Tennessee. And doesn't quite make it to your neck of the woods, Joe. But anyway, heat is going to be the story across, again, the south central United States. And for other excesses such as, let's say precipitation, nothing. Snow, of course, nothing. And wind, nothing at all. So the big story in the coming week will be, again, the extreme heat that'll be over the central and, again, especially the southern plains. Again, Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, and even into the deep south in northern sections of Louisiana.
Well, they're forecasting a breakdown of this persistent pattern that we've had for 2 months. And the last, a couple of weeks ago, the long range models were showing it, and then at the last minute, in came something over the top and moved down from Canada to prolong the troughing in the eastern part of the United States. I'm not saying it's going to happen again. I don't, I kind of looked when I looked at things the last couple of days. I thought, well, maybe this time um, uh, we might get a longer lasting ridge that pushes into the eastern part of the United States. But I would not be shocked if, over the next couple of days, all of a sudden there's some trough that's coming over the top and, the ridge gets squashed to an extent or maybe flattened out and pushed a little bit further to the west. We'll see how that goes. Meanwhile, as we take a look at the radar tonight and see what's going on, well, in the northeast, really not much. There's actually just a couple of scattered thunderstorms in eastern Connecticut and parts of east central Massachusetts. And yeah, that's it. Doesn't look like there's anything over eastern. There might be a little blip over eastern Long Island. Also, a couple of scattered cells in south central PA, south of Harrisburg. And then you get into North Carolina and back over into Georgia. You see this area that also pushes into western North Carolina, parts of northeastern Tennessee and eastern Kentucky, southernmost West Virginia. And there's a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings and a flash flood warning that's popped up near Columbia, South Carolina. Also, we're seeing some stronger cells. I forgot what the highway is that goes from Houston to Dallas, but about, say, 60% of the way from Houston to Dallas, you're running into some pretty hefty thunderstorms there. Dallas is out of it at the moment. There's also some cells in parts of western Louisiana and in southeast Louisiana. We seem to have a dying area of showers and storms there. Some thunderstorms off the southwest coast of Florida. And then you see what's going on up and down the Rockies with showers and storms and into parts of the southwest. The Storm Prediction Center, our friends at the Storm Prediction Center, who are, as we know, constantly glued to the Joe and Joe Weather Show on a daily basis. Marginal risk being indicated tonight in most of the areas that we see thunderstorm activity, just a general risk out in the Rockies. And they even got that small area of general risk nosing down into northeastern Connecticut and Rhode Island, which kind of justifies those scattered storms that are there on the radar at the moment. As far as the forecast going forward, we'll take a look at tomorrow, where we have a marginal risk from southern Louisiana northeastward through, including me, much of central and northern Georgia, into south and North Carolina. The general risk kind of noses its way up through Pennsylvania into parts of southern New York. And you've got general risk up into the Rockies, the Western Lakes, and in the Pacific Northwest. Does that come with no tornado risk, or actually below 2%? It's not zero. And then on day 3, we've got general thunderstorm activity up and down the East Coast, except for a good chunk of Maine. Marginal risk in the area that's being indicated for Idalia making landfall sometime in that time frame, and a marginal risk up in the Pacific Northwest. And of course, again, as far as the rainfall is concerned, they got a half to 3/4 of an inch of rain indicated. And I suppose that's from this weather system that's coming, that we have to start to deal with tomorrow and Tuesday. But after Tuesday, after that goes by, after that's done, it might even linger into Wednesday, but after that goes by, we should be done in the Northeast for the rest of the week and through the weekend.
Yes, absolutely. One thing I did not show you on the CPC forecast was the precipitation probabilities, and I will point out that on the 6 to 10 and the 8 to 14-day outlook here in the Northeast, near or below normal probabilities for precipitation. So, Joe, what the CPC seems to be alluding to is that once we get past all of this over the next few days, once we get through the precip for Tuesday into early Wednesday, we may very well see a protracted or prolonged stretch of dry and increasingly warm weather here in the Northeast, taking us through the middle part of September.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense to me. We've got a recon at Frankling right now. 965 millibars. Can you, Joe, real quick, can you just check to see what's on the advisory, what they carried for pressure on the advisory?
Sure. This is for Franklin now?
Yeah.
Alrighty, hang on. Come on. For Franklin, they have minimum central pressure 970 millibars.
All right, so the new recon, so this was as of 8 o'clock, 12 minutes after 8, down 5 millibars since the 5 o'clock advisory. So it's strengthening at about let's just speak a millibar and a half an hour since then. So let's see if that trend continues. This doesn't have to go much further to get to be a major hurricane. So it's and certainly the rapid development of the eye that we saw in the satellite loop a little while ago indicates that maybe we're into a strengthening phase here that's going to take it into major hurricane status. I don't have. There doesn't seem to be the information for Idalia hasn't seemed to be coming in on tropical tidbits. It was there, but it was the old one. So I
has on the tropical disturbances map as of 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time, which would be what, 8 p.m.
Right.
Daylight Time.
Yes.
So there's the intermediate. They have maximum winds, sustained winds so far, 45 miles per hour, 40 knots. And the minimum central pressure, 995 millibars.
The pressure with this is very low. That was another reason why, oftentimes when the pressure drops, it takes a while for the wind to catch up. And I just wonder whether, the fact that the pressures here, they've been low all along through its development phase. That was another thing that was kind of nagging at me, is like, is this going to throw a surprise in terms of intensity? We're going to know this in the next couple of days. I mean, the answer is going to come fairly quickly. So, but that's, again, one of my reasons for speculating. Thank you for those of you who have hit the like button tonight. 90 likes so far, so we're 10 shy of 100. Take us over the top, and we'll be happy. So here's the upper air pattern. You see the upper low way up in Canada strengthens a trough down through the Great Lakes. It impacts both Franklin by kicking it out to the northeast and away from Bermuda, and Idalia, taking it up into Georgia, coastal South and North Carolina, and then eventually it just sort of gets kicked away to the east from there as the trough just gets stretched out and the upper high starts to build back from Texas eastward into the Ohio Valley. And here we go as we go through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The westerly winds from Canada are just to our north. The ridge is lying, to the south, back from Colorado and New Mexico, east-southeastward into Alabama and Mississippi and Tennessee. We're sort of on the edge of this. And there's another upper trough early next week on Labor Day running through eastern Canada. Unlike the last one, which dropped down off the east coast, this one seems to want to just kind of move over into New England and then drop down along 60. So that gives room for the upper high to move into Kentucky and Tennessee during the days after Labor Day, which would account for the above normal temperatures. And you also see a trough for the first time in months dropping down into the Pacific Northwest and down to the West Coast. The models seem to be keying on this idea. They all are going in this direction for the latter part of the long range. Also, I want to point out that the GFS is spinning up something off the southeast coast in around 9 or 10 days underneath that ridge. And since we seem to be in a pattern where everything wants to spin and the Pacific wants to be quiet, it might not be far-fetched. Let's put it that way, that something winds up spinning up there. But then it goes, because if you've got a big upper high that's stretched from the plains to the mid-Atlantic, anything that does form there is going to move westward or northwestward into the southeast or maybe even into the Gulf of Mexico. They also wants to generate something in the southwest Gulf and take it northward toward Texas. So we may have, we certainly looks like we're going to have more tropical activity of some sort to deal with. More troughing in the west, ridging in the east, right through all of the long range. Now, I'm looking at this, Joe. Let's assume, and it's a big assumption, let's assume that the 384 hour is close to being correct, that ridge is, this pattern shift, or this pattern change may not last very long before it starts to revert back to something that we've been, more used to in the last couple of months, because you can already see, vortex in central Canada ridging up in Alaska and into northwest Canada. So yeah, we may get warm for a time, but it's not going to be weeks on end. Maybe we go above normal for a week or so, or something like that, and then the pattern starts to change again.
So it may turn out to be a warm start the first half of September, and then we may cool down for the second half.
Correct.
That's not out of the question.
All right, let's see what's going on precip-wise here in the Northeast in the next couple of days, and set up the weekend, the Labor Day weekend. So here we are. This is this evening. You see Frankling on the lower right. You can't see Idalia yet on this frame that we have, but then by tomorrow evening, you do see it there in the bottom middle. And of course, there are some scattered storms around, or downpours around tomorrow in inland areas. And then you got this weather front that's sort of coming through here for late Tuesday night, which generates some showers and storms. You see it there on the GFS for Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. And then it takes Idalia and moves it eastward off the North Carolina coast. Actually brings rain Thursday almost into southern New Jersey Thursday morning. We're looking at what the radar presentation is supposed to be. That might be a little bit too far to the north. But either way, it does get kicked out anyhow. And then you get a nice high that builds in, leaving for improving weather conditions. I kind of think this is probably a little bit overdone, too far north. And then the high goes out east of Cape Cod, kind of arms back westward into Saturday. So as long as we don't get something silly to happen, like Idalia sitting off the North Carolina coast and we get an onshore flow, the weather should be, as you said, should be pretty nice. Late Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and into Monday. In fact, much of the eastern two-thirds of the United States has hardly any precip for Sunday and Monday. It's very quiet for the Labor Day weekend.
Let's also point out that we have a full moon on Wednesday, and that's also a moon that's at perigee, closest to the Earth. So the pull of the moon, the effect of the astronomical spring tide, as we call it, will be greater than normal. The range of tide will be very low tides and unusually high tides. And it'll be interesting to see what Idalia does, and also the effects still of Frankling in terms of causing rip currents and swells. So there may be some minor flooding issues even up here as we move into Wednesday and Thursday, again because of the influence of the moon.
Yeah, it'll be great beach weather, but there'll be surf all over the place. People may tell you can't swim, or you have to swim in restricted areas.
Right.
Well, we got our 100 likes, Joe. We're at 111. So let's do a little Briller Jeopardy, shall we?
Why not?
Okay. I have one, but you might still have one.
I will check.
If you have one, you do yours, and I'll hold mine till tomorrow.
Let me check. I think I do have one.
I hope the folks on the chat board are getting their thinking caps on.
Where are you, Scott? Ah, yes. Yes, actually, we have, this is about tornadoes in August. Good thing we're using this now because August is almost done. So there's how many questions here? There's 3 questions. First question number 1. How many tornadoes does the United States average in the month of August? And if you're within 25, you will get credit for that.
Oh, I have no idea. Let's see if the chat board has any idea. Does the chat board have any idea?
How many tornadoes?
Michael McGuire says 62.
Okay, that's within 25.
Christina Pedia says 65. Jason Schaefer, 44. Sandy Blue Ocean retracted her guess. Brandon Doherty, I think you're a smidge too high with 500. Okay. Carol DeCara, 63. Lisbeth K, 50.
Maggie P is close.
78 says Maggie P. 76 says Steve LaPointe.
William Huber, you're way off.
Lou Alisi says 676. So congratulations for those of you who got it to within 25. Michael McGuire now says 79.
Mark G. Oh, so close.
84 says Mark G. So is it close enough for horseshoes?
Yeah.
William Huber said he meant 88.
Well, that's close, but not as close as Mark G.
Okay, so to honor the late Bob Barker, who passed away yesterday, is it higher or lower?
It is lower.
All right, so then it's 83 or 82. I'll say 82.
Well, you should have took 83.
Okay, 83 is the correct answer. 83. But congratulations if you got it to within 25. Brandon Doherty, hitting the tip jar. Thank you. Brandon, most appreciated that you banged the tip jar on this Sunday night. Next question.
Next question is, what 5 states have produced the most tornadoes in August? And if Joe or Chatboard wants a hint, 2 out of 5 have very cold winters. What 5 states have produced the most tornadoes in August? 2 out of the 5 states that are on this list have very cold winters.
Okay, so I'll let the chat board guess this. Yes, Christina Petey is right. By Price is Right rules, she was the closest without going over. Okay. Minnesota, says Jason Shaver and Rich Rothbansky. Is that on there?
Yes, there is.
Okay. Owen Daniel says Oklahoma.
No, believe it or not, Oklahoma not on the list. I would have chosen Oklahoma myself.
Joe Z says South Dakota.
South Dakota, sorry about that, Joe. Maybe you should have gone a little further north.
Like Northern Grace did with North Dakota.
North Dakota is on the list. So now we have the 2 cold places, North Dakota and Minnesota. So now we have to figure out the 3 that are on the list that are not
Well,
so
Chuck
cold.
Cardillo and Lou Alisi both said Wisconsin. Rich Rothbansky says Iowa.
Nope.
Rain X12 says Nebraska, Minnesota, Michigan, Iowa.
Nebraska, Minnesota.
Michigan and Iowa.
Minnesota's on there, yeah.
All right, but we already had that one.
No, Iowa's not.
Maggie
Michigan.
P says Texas and Florida.
Those are 2 of the 3 left.
Oh, so you got 2 of the 3. Texas
Right.
and Florida. So what's left now? 1?
There's just 1 left.
Tommy Clam says Kansas. Mark G says Montana. Patrick Darcy and Rich Rothbansky say Colorado.
And there you go.
It was Colorado. There you go.
It was Colorado.
Eastern Colorado actually does get a lot of, they get a fair amount of severe weather there and tornadoes.
Texas, Florida, North Dakota, Colorado, Minnesota.
Okay. Next.
And now the last on the list. Last question of the list tonight. What weather event produced the biggest outbreak of tornadoes in the month of August?
In the month of August?
Right. What singular weather event produced the biggest outbreak of tornadoes in the month of August?
I'm going to say, I'll take a guess on this one. Might it have been Hurricane Camille?
That would have been a very, very good guess. I would have even chosen Camille. And you're only half right. It wasn't Camille.
But it was hurricane induced.
Right. It was another very angry lady.
I'm trying to think. Which one produced a lot. Was it Carla or Beulah?
You want me to give you a hint, Joe?
Yeah.
Brownie, you're doing a good job.
Brownie, you're doing a good job?
Yeah.
That's the hint?
That's the hint, yeah.
I have absolutely
Chuck Cardillo
no idea. Chuck Cardillo, Hurricane Katrina.
Yes.
Well, where did that come from?
Apparently there was a gentleman who was in charge of what's the government agency
Oh,
that you
FEMA?
FEMA?
Oh, right. Yes.
The
Okay.
gentleman's name was Brown.
Right.
And
And George W. Bush said, Brownie, you're doing a good job.
Even though he didn't do he did a terrible job.
All right. Now I want to throw this at you because I happen to be watching. I want to see how good you know this. I'm going to ask you two questions, two trivia questions, because I happen to be watching the Flintstones the other night. All right. So, what is the population of Bedrock?
Oh God. You know, I think in one of the very earliest episodes there was in fact, it may have been the very first episode, they showed a sign, "Welcome to Bedrock, population." Oh, what is it? I don't know, 2,000, something like that, or
close. Anybody on the chat board want to take a stab at this? Rich Rothmansky got it right off the bat. The first one, 2,500.
Wow.
Okay, and the other question is, Joe, what was the name of the Bedrock newspaper?
Oh, I don't know. The Daily Granite? I don't.
You know what? You're in the right direction. You're in the right direction. Not Granite, but
the Daily Boulder.
No. It might be used for a patio or for landscaping.
Patio or a landscape. The Daily Slab?
No, it's not the Daily Slab. It's not the Daily Slab. It's not Stone. It's not Paver. It's not Quarry. No. Not the Daily News. No. There it is. Jason Schaefer got it. The Daily Slate.
The Daily Slate.
The Daily Slate. Yes.
And they named the newspaper after Fred's boss, Mr. Slate.
Mr. Slate. And Leon Probitsky bangs the tip jar. Thank you, Leon, for hitting Super Chat tonight.
By the way, here's another bit of Flintstone trivia. What was Mr. Slate's first name?
Well, that's you know what? I don't know. I watched the Flintstones, but not enough to absorb all the pertinent information that I would have needed to survive on a day-to-day basis.
Believe it or not, his first name was Nate.
Nate? Nate Slate?
Nate Slate.
Oh, good God. Oh, good God. Oh, all right.
Is it time for us to go, Joe?
Yeah, you know what? We've gone over an hour tonight, so that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay, so
122 likes.
Yes, 121 likes. Thank you for those of you who hit the like button. Of course, it's not still late to hit the like button because I haven't shut the show off yet. So if you like it, hit the like button, and Joe and I will jump for joy. You got anything else to add before we say goodbye? Good night.
Absolutely none. We'll be back here tomorrow night at 7:35, and I also want to thank Brendan Doherty and Leon Probitsky for hitting the tip jar tonight on a Sunday night.
Yes, and the Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Tempest by WeatherFlow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is at the top of the chat board. It's pinned there for your convenience. And it's also on the descriptor to this video. Use the coupon code IWANTAWeatherStation for anything you buy on the Tempest website, and Joe will tell you what you'll get.
You'll get 10 big % off.
Omni True Value Hardware, our other sponsor, at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, 631-756-1125. They've got the best prices anywhere, and the website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
All right, so this was our sort of inaugural, it's always going to be on Sunday at 7:35 p.m. show. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. And we will see you tomorrow night. Same bad time, same bad channel.
Same bad channel.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Joe.